The house always sounded louder when nothing was said, and that morning the quiet felt sharp as Emily Parker stood by the kitchen window, watching the gray Vermont sky stretch awake while her breath fogged the glass, her coat already on though she had nowhere to go yet, because staying felt harder than leaving and leaving felt impossible, and behind her her father Michael sat at the table with his hands wrapped around a mug he forgot to drink from, his shoulders slightly bent the way they had been ever since life taught him how to carry loss without dropping it, and the clock ticked fast like it was nervous too, pushing time forward while both of them stayed still, living inside a moment neither knew how to open, because there were things that had grown between them over the years, not walls but understanding, the kind that comes from shared grief and long nights and quiet dinners, the kind that does not need explaining until one day it suddenly does, and Emily felt that change now. Deep in her chest, a soft ache mixed with hope, because something had entered her life again, something warm and uncertain and full of promise, and she hadn't told her father, not because she was hiding but because she didn't know how to shape the words, and Michael didn't ask, not because he didn't care but because he cared too much, because ever since Emily's mother died when Emily was young, words had felt dangerous, like if he chose the wrong ones he might break what little peace they had built together, so they moved carefully around each other, loving without noise. And that morning felt like a turning point even though nothing happened, because Emily kept touching the pocket of her coat where a folded letter rested, the paper soft from being opened too many times, Daniel Wright's name written in a steady hand, a name from her past that now felt new again, and Michael noticed the movement, noticed the way she smiled without meaning to, noticed the tension and light living together on her face, and memory moved through him quickly, reminding him of his late wife standing in the same spot years ago, pregnant and glowing with a future neither of them could fully imagine, and for a second he almost spoke, almost asked where Emily was going, who had written to her, why her eyes carried both fear and excitement, but the words stayed locked inside him, because he knew that love arrives quietly and leaves signs before it leaves explanations, and Emily sensed his attention, turned slightly, met his eyes, and in that look 1,000 things passed between them, grief, gratitude, worry, trust, and a truth that had not yet been spoken but had already been accepted, because Michael had raised her to listen to her heart even when it scared her, and now her heart was speaking clearly, telling her she was standing at the edge of something that might change everything, and the silence didn't feel empty anymore, it felt full, like a pause before music starts, and Emily realized that her father already knew, not the details but the meaning, that she was growing beyond the life they had protected together. And Michael realized that his job was shifting again, from guardian to witness, and neither of them smiled or cried or reached out, they just stayed there, breathing the same air, sharing the same unspoken truth, while outside the town slowly woke up and the day moved forward, unaware that inside that small kitchen, a story had already begun, built not on words, but on love that understood without being told. Daniel Wright came back into Emily Parker's life without warning, like a memory stepping out of the past and asking for a second chance, and it happened on an ordinary afternoon inside a small bookstore where the air smelled of paper and dust, where Emily had gone to hide from her thoughts and instead found him standing in the history aisle holding a book he clearly wasn't reading, his hair a little shorter, his face more serious, but his eyes still carrying that calm warmth she remembered, and the moment they recognized each other. Time moved fast instead of stopping, words spilling easily as if the years apart had been a short pause, not a long road filled with changes, and they talked about work and life and how the town never really changed even when people did, and they walked out together without planning it, letting the cold air push them forward into coffee and then into longer walks where stories grew deeper and laughter came softer, because both of them were careful, older now, shaped by heartbreaks that taught them how fragile hope could be, and Emily felt her heart opening slowly, not rushing, not falling, but choosing him again with clearer eyes, and Daniel felt it too, the pull that didn't demand but invited, the kind of attraction built on trust and shared history, and days turned into weeks and their connection grew through small moments, late evening calls, quiet smiles, shared silence that felt safe, and Emily didn't tell her father about Daniel, not because she feared his reaction, but because she knew he would see it before she said it, and he did, noticing how she moved lighter through the house, how she cooked with music playing again, how she stayed up late reading messages she didn't want to end, and Michael understood more than she realized, because he remembered what love looked like before it was spoken, how it showed up in habits and hope, and one night when Emily came home late with cold hands and bright eyes, Michael sat in the living room pretending to read. Watching her pass, feeling pride and fear mix inside him, pride that she was alive in a way grief could not steal, fear that love always carries risk, and when she paused and looked back at him, both of them waiting for the other to speak, the truth stood between them again, solid and gentle, and neither crossed it, because some things do not need words to be real. And that night Emily lay awake thinking of Daniel's smile and her father's quiet understanding, realizing that her heart had learned something before her mind could catch up, that love does not ask for permission but it asks for honesty, and Michael lay awake too, staring at the ceiling, remembering his late wife's laugh and knowing that love never truly leaves, it only changes shape, and in that shared night of unspoken awareness, both of them accepted the same truth from different sides, that Emily was stepping into a future shaped by her own choices, guided not by fear but by feeling, and that the bond between father and daughter was strong enough to bend without breaking, because real love does not need control, it only needs trust, and by morning the house felt different, not quieter, but lighter, as if something heavy had been released without ever being named. The winter festival filled the town with sound and light, and Emily walked through the crowd beside Daniel with a feeling she had not known in years, a feeling that life was moving forward instead of circling old pain, and the air was cold. But their steps were warm and steady, close enough that their arms brushed without effort, and every small touch carried meaning without demand, because what they shared was quiet and sure, built on trust rather than excitement alone, and as music played and lights wrapped around bare trees, Emily felt seen in a way that felt safe, not overwhelming, and Daniel felt it too, the comfort of being chosen without pressure, and they stopped near a booth to share hot drinks, laughing softly, unaware at first that across the street Michael Parker stood watching from a distance, his hands in his coat pockets, his breath slow, his eyes sharp despite the years, and recognition hit him quickly, not with shock but with memory, because he knew Daniel's face before his name reached his mind, knew the family, knew the kindness that once lived in that boy's actions, and Michael watched the way Daniel leaned slightly toward Emily as she spoke, the way he listened instead of waiting to talk, and Michael felt something settle inside him, something that had been tense for months without his knowing. Because a father learns to read danger and care in silence, and this scene held no fear, only honesty, and as the lights brightened and the crowd cheered, Emily sensed her father's presence before she saw him, turning her head and meeting his gaze across the street, and time slowed for a brief moment where past and present touched, and Michael did not wave or step forward, he only nodded slightly, a small gesture heavy with meaning. And Emily felt her throat tighten, because in that nod lived acceptance, trust, and love that did not ask her to choose between paths, and later that night, when the crowd thinned and the music softened, Emily found Michael standing alone near the edge of the square, and the moment felt fragile but right, and Daniel stayed back without being asked, understanding that some moments belonged to family alone, and Michael spoke first, his voice calm and steady, saying only that she looked happy. Not as a question but as a statement, and Emily answered honestly, saying she was, and the truth moved between them without conflict, without defense, and Michael did not ask who Daniel was or where things were going, because he already knew enough, and asking more would only serve his own fears, not her needs, and in that quiet exchange, Michael let go of the last piece of control he had been holding, understanding that love meant stepping aside without stepping away. And Emily understood that her father's silence was not distance but respect, and as they stood there under fading lights, both of them felt the weight of years shift, grief making room for something new, not replacing what was lost but honoring it by allowing joy to return, and when Emily walked back to Daniel, taking his hand openly now, Michael turned away with a small smile he did not try to hide, knowing that the truth they never spoke had finally been lived, not argued or explained, just accepted. And the night closed gently around them all, carrying forward a future shaped by trust, love, and the quiet strength of understanding. Spring arrived without drama, melting the last signs of winter and bringing change that felt calm instead of frightening, and Emily Parker felt it in the way sunlight filled the house earlier each morning and in the way her heart no longer felt torn between staying and going, because the decision had formed naturally over time, shaped by quiet talks with Daniel, shared plans spoken carefully, and a future that felt possible without rushing. And the house she shared with her father slowly became a place of memories rather than pause, and Michael sensed it too, noticing packed boxes appear one by one, not all at once, because Emily was gentle even in leaving, respectful of the life they had built together, and they moved around each other with ease, cooking meals, sharing small updates, never discussing what both already understood, that Emily was preparing to step into a new chapter, one built with love and independence rather than fear, and Michael watched her with pride mixed with a familiar ache, the same ache he felt when she first went to school alone, knowing that letting go was not loss but proof that he had done something right, and days passed quickly as plans settled into place, Daniel waiting patiently, offering support without pressure, showing through actions that he respected the bond between father and daughter, and on the morning Emily was set to leave, the house felt unusually still, filled with the sound of taped boxes and final checks, and Michael stood by the door holding an old photograph he had kept tucked away, one showing Emily as a baby between him and his late wife, all three smiling into a future none of them could fully imagine, and he handed it to Emily without ceremony, telling her he had always hoped she would find a love that felt safe, words chosen carefully, not naming Daniel but naming the feeling that mattered most, and Emily felt tears rise but did not let them slow her. Stepping forward to hug her father tightly, holding him longer than usual, understanding that this goodbye was not an ending but a change in distance, not in connection, and she told him she had found that love, her voice steady, honest, grateful, and Michael nodded, holding his composure, because he knew his role now was to trust the life she was choosing, and as Emily walked toward the car, Daniel waiting quietly, Michael watched without calling out, knowing that some love is strongest when it stands still and lets others move forward, and as the car pulled away, the house did not feel empty, only quieter, filled with years of shared moments that did not disappear when doors closed, and Michael returned inside, placing the remaining photo back where it belonged, feeling peace settle in place of worry, while Emily looked ahead through the windshield, her past secure behind her, her future open and hopeful, carrying with her the truth that had never needed words, that love, whether between parent and child or between two hearts choosing each other, does not always need to be spoken to be real, it only needs to be understood.